Okay, we're back. This is your third and fourth set of videos to be watching and outlining over and getting down. One thing, please be sure that you're doing is if you want to make sure you're getting this stuff, then I definitely would be, I know it takes the time. I understand that. And you got things going on. But if you could be watching the videos, even twice and picking up some more information from it, because it's not just going to be stuff that's on the slides here that's going to be on your test. It's also stuff I'm explaining to you. And I do try to give you a lot of examples and those kind of things to try to help you guys. So hopefully you are listening to them and getting something out of the videos then rather than just writing down the notes then from it. But anyway, we're going to keep going on. This is the third video then. How do we respond to stress? Okay, and you can see from the side here, okay, just first off, I'm going to look at this. Basically, there's two ways when we're responding to stress. There's two locuses that we put control on. And what we mean by locus of control is where are you putting, when you're having stress, where do you put that stress out to? Do you put it internally? Do you internalize the stress? Okay, or do you external? And you can kind of look at the examples here and you can kind of see which one's probably better than the other. Okay, external is the belief that success or failure is a result of luck, chance, fate. Internal, belief that you have the control of your personal success and failure. Okay, so we know what this deals with then. Again, I pass back your test to you and you get an A on a test and you're looking at it and I say, hey man, you did a great job in that test, super job. And you look up and the first thing you say is, well, I didn't do that well on it. I could have done a little bit better. I was pretty lucky on a lot of it. Okay, then you are this one. You externalize your locus of control there, okay? You don't want to take credit. You don't want to take personal success. You want to pass that off on something else, either on luck, chance, fate, whatever, okay? Tend to be negative or give up easily. So here again, you're out for sports. You're on that basketball team, right? And it's a last second shot and you throw it up and it misses. You go back into the locker room. First thing you do is you tend to be negative and you start saying, well, it wasn't my fault that we lost the game, man. I did everything I could. It was so-and-so. They couldn't pass the ball right. They weren't able to run the plays right. That's where you are. Again, you are an external person. Being an external locus of control person is not a good thing to be. It is a very negative thing to be. Okay? External locus people tend to look at chance or forces beyond their own control. You don't even believe that you can do things. You have to believe that either you're the victim of something. If something goes wrong, it's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault. You believe that if you do something good, again, you don't take any praise for it, it's because of others. Okay? External locus people tend to be very negative. They tend to also take on stress way too heavily, and they have a lot of physical ailments from that. Internal, okay, they believe that they're in control. They believe that they are the responsibility of the factors that goes on, whether it's good or bad. Okay, they tend to be less prone to stress. They tend to take high achievement. They tend to be more independent. Now, it's great for us to sit here and say, yep, I'm an internal locus person. But in actuality, a lot of us are probably a mixture here, probably a little bit of both. Okay, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you need to look at and be able to figure out, because if you are way over here, if you are a very high external locus person, then you need to learn to change that. You need to learn to maybe try to look at things differently and try to internalize it a little bit more and take a little bit more control of things. Okay, realize that you do a good job. Realize and take success for those kinds of things. So when it comes to stress, we first figure out which direction are we going with our stress when we're having to respond to it. Either we try to externalize it or internal. The second thing that goes on then when we have stress is we do tend to have three different types of responses. Now, when you have stress, you have all three of these, but you may not have all three of these going on at the same time, okay? That one takes place, then the other, and it's kind of a boom, 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 real quick hitting. But right now I have the three up here as emotional, okay, physiological, and then behavioral. When you have a stress, you have all three, but not necessarily in that order. Okay, some psychologist says it actually starts out with behavior, then physiological. Okay, and I don't know which way, but I just put them up here like this. Okay, So we're going to start with emotional first. So we're going to say when you have a stress, so just think of an example of stress. Just come up with one and write it down. Maybe it's, you're stressed out because you have to listen to these videos all the time. So that's your stress. So what's your emotional feeling? You're feeling pretty upset about it. Okay, so there's your emotional feelings. So we got that example. So emotional feelings basically link your thoughts, that's your cognitive reactions, and your emotions together. Remember, take those four types of stresses we talked about, okay? Frustration, conflict, pressure, change. And then also the good one that we talked about, competition. Okay, when you have a stress, one of those types, it links up with that emotion then. Typically, not always, typically, make sure you write that down, typically, frustration links up with annoyance, anger, and rage. Not always, but typically. Typically, when you have a conflict or some kind of pressure, you're going to have an apprehension where you're kind of worried about it a little bit, you're kind of fearful of it a little bit, anxiety where you get even greater fear, greater worry, greater stress from it, and then fear itself, all out fear. When you have a change going on in your life, like a divorce or like a death or like something to that effect, then dejection, sadness, and grief usually are the emotions you're feeling. And finally, in competition, there's happiness, thrill, and exhilaration of doing the competitive thing. So we all have emotions when we're having stress. Barbara Fredrickson was a psychologist who really studied this very intensely, and she came up with a theory called the inverted hypotheses. And we're going to get a little bit more into this in class tomorrow so I can explain a little bit more to you. But basically what I want you to understand about it is when we have stress, and Barbara Fredrickson talked about this a lot, we don't think of stress as bad, even though I've been telling you all the bad, the four major bad types of stresses: conflict, change, pressure, and frustration. Fredrickson said that basically when you first are under stress, what happens is, at first, we all start out with having what's called a positive emotion towards the stress. So I'm going to, you have a test tomorrow. Not really, but let's say we do have a test tomorrow. The first thing that goes through your mind is, okay, I'm going to do well on this test. I blew the last test. I'm going after this one. You have that little push, that little motivation, that little enhancement of drive going on inside of you to say, I'm going to do it this time. And that's called that positive emotion that starts you out. And Fredrickson says we all have that. The difference is for some of us, it peaks very quickly and falls off very fast. We start out going, oh yeah, and then all of a sudden, oh, screw it, I'm not going to do well. And that's where this inverted hypothesis comes in. Because according to Fredrickson, we all kind of start up here, we are on an upward slope, and then for some of us, when we realize we're not going to do so well, it falls down. And that tends to happen a lot. So what is the inverted hypothesis theory according to Fredrickson? Is that a task of a performance will improve with the increased emotional arousal. So as your emotional arousal becomes more positive towards the task and you get more involved in it and you get more excited about it, your performance, the amount of how you're doing on that is going to improve. It's going to get better and better. But it will come up to a point, and that point then is where we all hit, where all of a sudden we realize we're not going to succeed, or we don't make it, or we're just too frustrated to keep going anymore, and then it becomes disruptive to us, and then it deteriorates, and then we fall off the other side of the inverted hypothesis then. What we need to learn to do is to look at this as a warning sign. When we're doing a task and we feel we're at that point where we're going to fall down, we need to learn to feel that, and we need to be able to get away from those effects of the stress. Take a break, go get help, find some other alternative, something that can help get us away from that stress so that we can cope with it better. That's what Fredrickson's talking about here with her emotional arousal theory. Okay, so the inverted hypotheses and the emotional arousal theory are Barbara Fredrickson's. She argued that stress was actually good for you up to a certain point. Then it becomes detrimental. Then it becomes a problem, and it can actually get into all kinds of negatives then. But she believed that it actually could create creativity. It could create flexibility in a person. It could actually enhance your immune system and make you better by having stress coming into your life, if you know how to handle it. That was the key thing with Fredrickson then. So stress can help keep us alive. It energizes us in the short run. It can motivate us in the short run, in the long run. But psychologists never used to believe that stress was a good thing. For years, psychologists argued that stress was nothing but bad, bad, bad. And now psychologists are really beginning to change this idea and coming up with new thoughts of this. We're going to get into another psychologist here on your next slide dealing with Hans Selye, and we'll get more into him on your next video then.